like happy New Year time. Merry Christmas if I haven't seen you or haven't had the opportunity to even talk to you, or if you haven't caught us on Facebook, and Happy New Year. And if you got to see my crazy video this week, then you saw the oops and the mistakes of doing a live video where I wished everybody a happy Thanksgiving on New Year's Day. So it was one of those things that you look at, and when you start to go live, it happens. And I don't know why. I've done it multiple times this season where I have just wished somebody happy Thanksgiving, like all over again. I don't know if I'm already at Thanksgiving of 2021 and ready to play Christmas music all over again. I'm not sure which way it is, but it happened. And Happy New Year to everybody. If you are online, Facebook and YouTube Live, hey, thanks for joining us. Thanks for welcoming us into your home. We're so glad to be here and be a part of your family and what's going on and what God has for 2021. I mean, if 2020 is gone and past, and I'm totally excited about 2020, but if 2020 is just a glimpse of what God can do in 2021, then I'm looking forward to 2021 to see this year and what God has planned for this place and this church and this community. And, we had, Wendy and I had, let me get some business out of the way, then I'll jump into that part. Last couple things, business, just some church business. I almost forgot about it, but our annual church meeting will be February 4th. So I believe it's February 4th. It's the first Sunday of February. You see how this year is going to go already? Like, it's there. So it's the first Sunday of February, immediately following services. We will record it, but we won't be Facebook and YouTube Live. So if you want to be a part of that, then we'll kind of just ask that you're here, or you can watch the video. We will have it posted up on our website as an annual report for the church. So we will partake of that. Just looking back at last year and how well and how blessed we are as a church and what God did last year. So that will be that week. I have put our council together in forms, and so in the next couple of weeks, I will have those names out in front of the church for us to do also and handle on February 4th to put them into place and into position for the next 2 years as a cycle as our church council. So those names will be coming out to everyone as well. And then one last thing, as we're going through, we're just trying to clean up, and not really even clean up that things are messy, but we're just trying to organize for me, personally, on my organizational styles and the way I think and process things. And so starting in 2 weeks, we will have membership cards available both online and here at the church. And what we're asking is that if you consider Worcester Foursquare Church your home church, that you re-sign the membership card. It's just because, when you look at a church that's 90 plus years old, name list and scheduling list, they're huge, right? And when you go through transitions and things, those lists are huge and it's big. And sometimes you just need to reset yourself. Sometimes you just need to go back and say, okay, here's our starting ground. Here it is. And so for that reason, I've talked to our denomination in our district, and they are good with it for us just to have that open during the month of January. It's not meaning you can't become a member at any point. You can. But we're going to ask that point if everybody could just rejoin and re-sign those things so that we have a clear picture of exactly who's all in with the Worcester Foursquare Church. And so we're so excited about that. And, and as we leave off of that, Wendy and I have spent the last several weeks kind of going through, and actually where we were at this time was over here in this front office room over here, and we repainted it and we changed it around and we made it just I like to call it our war room. If you ever saw the movie of The Prayer where they had the war room, well, it's not the same principle. It's just a place where we can have meetings and we can sit down and talk, and we can meet with people that need some help maybe in their marriages and stuff. But there was a time when that room was used for other things, and we just thought, it's time for us to have a meeting place where we can go behind a closed door and shut the door and be able to talk with people. But as we were doing that, as we were kind of going through things, God is really funny about reminding us of so many things in our lives so we don't lose track. But as we were going through these things, we started to open up these two big filing cabinets that are in there. And we're like, oh, let's just dig in and let's see what's going on and what's in these filing cabinets. Because do you have drawers at home or places at your home where you open it up and you just kind of close it because you're like, yeah, too much. And you just shut the door? And those were what those cabinets have felt like for me. Like I pull them open and I look and there's so much information in there. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm going to do that another time because I just don't want to dig into it. Well, these last couple of weeks, we've actually taken the opportunity to dig through some of those things that were in those cabinets. And what we love the most is, again, how God reminds us of this place. You know, it was where the church started, which really went back even farther than we've read before, because it started with just a few people and like $3 in the checking account in like 1937. It started in 1929, but this record was from 1937, where it was like just a few people and $3 in the checking account. And I'm like, man, just how do you start with $3? And you think, well, it was 1937. Well, so just out of curiosity, I did the inflation on that, and it was like $55 to today. So I'm like, how do you start a church with just a few people and $55? You know? And it was there. And then we found these lists of all the pastors that have been here prior. And it was a good, decent, reasonable size names and people that we on there. So a couple of the names we recognized, most of the names we did not, but we saw that. And then we started pulling out and we saw tablecloths in there that were signed from a women's ministry. And we saw all this life and this fruitfulness. And we found Sunday school attendance and worship attendance and people that were typists. Like, I never even knew that a church needed typists. Like, I've been around the age where there's always a computer to do work for you. So there was a list of people who were just volunteer typists at the church to type out everything. And I'm like, wow. And I started to look and understand and see, and I was like, man, God, look how fruitful the church was. Look how bountiful the church was. Look what was going on, and people were serving and being plugged in, and they were doing all these great things, And I was like, man, I just want our church to be fruitful like that. I just want it to be fruitful in the fashion that it's fruitful. And it wasn't long after I said that God said, stop looking at the fruit, Rodney. Start looking at the seeds. And I'm like, well, I don't get that. And so he just did some downloads on me. He just working in me and going through things and showing me things. And I'm like, yeah, you're right, God. Why am I looking at the fruit? Why am I not looking at the seeds? See, if you've ever done a garden, think about it like this. If you've ever had a garden, Wendy and I have had many years where we've had a garden off of our house property somewhere else. But this year we had it a raised bed for the first time right at our house. And so we planted, yellow squash and zucchini. We planted some radishes, tomato plants, and we planted cucumbers and some different kinds of peppers. And we're just like, hey, what else are we going to do in 2020? Let's have a small garden and just see if we can produce some stuff off of it. And the thing about it was that the zucchini did really well. The yellow squash did really well, to the point where it was like, I just want to get rid of it as much as I love it. I'm tired of eating it. The tomato plants, I kid you not when I tell you, the cherry tomato plants were as tall as I was. And there were so many cherry tomatoes on them, we couldn't even eat the cherry tomatoes. But then there was the other parts of it where the cucumber, I think we got like one cucumber off of this plant. Or the radishes that I love so much, I didn't even get a radish. Or the peppers, as much as I love peppers, they got like this big, like golf ball size big. They weren't even like full-size peppers. And I started to relate it, and God's like, look, Rodney, look at what a garden does. Look at this thing that you planted all these seeds, and certain times it was bearing fruit, and other areas it wasn't bearing fruit. And God says it's much like the church. Because, see, we've already started to talk about this year's garden, but what we don't take into account, or we can't take into account, is the fact that seasons change, culture changes in our church, but season changes at our home. It might be wetter than it was before. It might be hotter or colder than it was before. Maybe we have more sunny days or more cloudy days than the other. There's conditions that happen that change the way the seeds produce or the way the seeds grow. And see, I may not have the crop of the squash like I had last year because things have changed. Things are going a different direction. Stuff is happening. And I'm like, well, that's so interesting, and that how that can happen in our lives, in our walk. And God was just like, you've got to understand, Rodney, you've got to understand that seasons are great, but if you continue to look back at the fruitfulness of the past, you're going to miss the seed of the future. And I'm like, God, you are absolutely right. If I keep looking back and just want this big crop, then I'm going to miss something. See, in our lives, in our way we go through things, we see something become very fruitful. And when it becomes very fruitful, we don't want to turn from there. So my squash was very fruitful. So next year, I'm going to have just a raised garden of squash because it was so fruitful. But it doesn't mean that it's going to be fruitful again this year. Or I might even go, well, that was just a bad year. I'm going to plant squash again. Oh, no, that's just another bad. And we can go 7, 8, 9, 10 years planting the same exact seed and expecting the same exact fruit to come out in the same abundance, but yet culture and our society and our circumstances have changed so much that seed does not produce in the fashion or the form that it used to. And because of that, we have to think differently. And because of that, I might have to think about this year might be a great radish year, and yay for me, because I love them. I'll eat them in the bundles. But I also have to know that there were good years of the squash. It's not that I'm discounting it. It's just that the fact that the season, something has changed to change the way something grows. And then I thought about it a little bit deeper, and I'm like, God, is there something in the story? Is there a way in the story or in the Bible? Is there a story in the Bible that kind of relates this story and the way we start to look at our new year and the way we start to look at January 3rd in 2021? Is there a way we can start to think about the next steps? I mean, if I asked you this question, and this is just going to be a hands-raising question, if I said, do you believe God is always moving? Okay, no hands. Okay, one hand. There we go, one hand. Okay, so we'll just talk to Chastity. It's one hand. But if we believe that God is always on the move, I'm going to show you something at the end that we as a church do that is so wrong. I don't know if there's another word that I can really, just so misunderstood about how we do things. But there's this story that comes out of the Bible of these two characters that starts to show us something that God is doing, something he is doing, a way he is doing it, and something he's asking us as a church to do, something he's asking us to be prepared for, something he's asking us as we go on to the next journey of the next year and the next season and the next crop and the next harvest. And it comes from the books of 1 Kings. So if you could grab your Bibles, or you can grab us right on YouVersion Bible app, and go to 1 Kings chapter 19. And we're actually going to start in verse 19. But this is a story about a guy by the name of Elijah. Now, I guarantee you that at some point in today's sermon, I am going to get Elijah and Elisha mixed up. But just kind of understand that I'm not doing it on purpose. It's just, it is a tongue twister for the day of why there has to be an Elijah and Elisha in the same story mixed together. But this is a story about a guy named Elijah, who is one of the major prophets, probably one of the greater prophets of the time. And he spoke so much and he did so much. Everybody looked up to him. And there was a time when Elijah's real main part of the story was him battling against Baal and this lady and this queen called Jezebel and who she was. And if you have never read this story about where he dumped all the water onto the wood and God still lit it on fire, showing that he was the one true God, you have to back up into 17 and 18 chapter of First King and read that just to understand who he is. But everybody looks up to Elijah. Everybody is looking to him. Everybody wants to be him. Everybody wants to be around him. They see all the things that he's doing and the way God is working through him. And it brings it because God says right after that, he goes and hides in this mountain because he's scared of Jezebel, who is coming after him because he's killed like 400 or 500 of her prophets and her priests. And so he's hiding in this mountain. And because he's hiding in this mountain, God says, why are you hiding in this cave, you know? And he's like, I am zealous for God. I want to know God, the Almighty, but I'm here. And he's like, eat. You're going to need your strength. Do this. Do this. But at some point, he says, I need you to go find this guy named Elisha and appoint him and bring him along with you. And this is where we pick up the story in 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 19 through 21. So he, meaning Elijah, departed from there and found Elisha, the son of Shaphat, who was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen in front of him. And he was with the 12th. Elijah passed by him and cast his cloak upon him. And he left the oxen and ran after Elijah and said, let me kiss my father and my mother, and then I will follow you. And he said to him, go back again? For what have I done to you? And he returned from following him and took the yoke of oxen and sacrificed them and boiled their flesh with the yokes of the oxen and gave it to the people. And they ate. Then he rose and went after Elijah and assisted him. Now, what I'm calling today's message is forget the fruit and start looking at the seed. Forget the fruit and start looking at the seed. See, when we look at Elisha's story, we see a guy who is out in the fields, plowing the fields with 12 ox. Now, what we need to know and understand is that at this point, Elisha was being very fruitful. He was plowing the field. He was producing for his family. He was producing things that were needed. He was producing something in this process. But Elijah comes to him and throws his cloak on him and is like, now there's a seed in him. And see, isn't it funny that God plants these seeds inside of each one of our lives? It's things that drive us, things that want us to do something. It's this passion that we have for things. And it's this seed that God's trying to pull out of us and use and mature and grow. But sometimes we can get stuck at the fruitfulness and forget about what God has planted in us in seed. And even when we are being fruitful, God is continuing to plant more seed inside of us because he's like, as you grow and mature, here's another seed. As you grow and mature again, here's another seed. Here's another seed. And the thing is that Elisha wanted to follow Elijah and become a priest because I know he believed and he knew who he was as he walked by. But Elisha had to pick. He had a choice to make, something he needed to do at the very moment in time. Elisha could have stayed and worked and been a farmer and continued to plow the fields and do everything he was and would have probably lived a very successful life, would have probably lived a good life. But was that his seed? I think that was his father's seed. His father and his mother, they were the farmers. They produced it. He was working underneath the fruitfulness of his parents. And God says, but I have a seed for you, and I've put something in you, and I need you to go with Elijah so that the seed can grow and be fruitful in another way. You see what I'm saying? See, as a church, as people, we often get stuck in this mix of the fruitfulness of our past. Well, this is just what I do. God's never going to change this, just who I am. And God's like, man, if you only understood, if you only knew the seed that I have planted in your life and where that can grow and what that can do, you would understand and you would gladly leave to go after the seed. And it's not that he's saying, forget your past. He just says, I have something new and better for you to grow into and to become and to do. And it's not always the fruitfulness of the things that have happened prior to you. He wasn't designed to continue to be fruitful under his father's seed. He had something for himself. And see, and sometimes in our lives, we have to decide where our fruitfulness is. We have to look at our passions and our desires and the things that God's stretching and growing in us to know that we're going to go all in after this seed. See, Elisha went all in. How do we know he went all in? Because he went back, he took the oxen, killed the oxen, boiled the oxen, fed the people, burned his plow, and got rid of it because he knew if he would have kept that stuff there, when times got tough and there was a struggle, he'd have thought, oh, what a mistake. I need to go back to the oxen and I need to go plow the field. But God says, no, don't stay there. I need you to go here. And because of that, I need you to get rid of the oxen and I need you to let loose of the plow and not go back. It reminded me of a story. I don't know if you've ever have read into it or talked about it, but in the year 1519, when Spain and Spanish conquistadors were attempting to take over Aztec, they wanted their gold. Something happened because the ships came into port and they came to the areas of Mexico where they believed the Aztecs culture to be living, and they got off. In a period of time when they got off, many of the men wanted to go back to where they came from. And so they weren't all in. They were always pressuring or putting pressure on them to let's go back. We can't win. We're not going to find the city of gold. We're not going to do. And so there was this pressure. Well, the leader of this conquest, of this time period, decided enough is enough. And he says, you know what I'm going to do to you? I'm going to burn the ships and I'm going to sink them out there in the water. And you're not going to have anything else except what's ahead of you. And so he went out and burned the ships and sunk them in the water so that the guys that came with them on the ships didn't have a way to go backwards. They had to go forward with where they were at. And it's a huge story when we start to think about what God can do in our lives, that he's saying, look, remember the past, remember what's gone on, remember the history. But Rodney, don't get stuck there and don't think that your fruitfulness is based off the previous pastors that been at this place. Because if you try to go be the other pastors and do and follow their fruitfulness, it's not the seed that I've planted in you. And because I've planted a specific seed in you, you've got to be fruitful in the way that and so yes, remember it, but don't go back to it. And I thought, wow, God, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right that we can't be a church that's still stuck in 1937. I can't go back to the way it was. I can't go back and do the things. God's called us to something new. And the reason he's called us to something new is because he's planted this new seed in us to say, look, here's the seed. If you just give it some time, I know it's going to be a struggle for you. I know it's going to be difficult. I know it's not going to be easy. Can we agree that all the hard things or the best things are always hard to do? It's never easy. If it was, everybody would do it. That's what they always tell us. And God's like, hey, stay the course. Follow the seed. And I was so amazed about how God started to put this together in our lives and how we start to walk our future and how we start to walk in 2021. We can look back at 2020. We can look back at year 2000. I mean, 1999, if anybody remembers quickly, the world was going to come to an end at 11:59, 2000. I mean, it was there. And guess what? We made it past it. We moved on. We got through there. It's the same thing with this. 2020, many people are saying struggles. I had a conversation with a guy the other day that they're not even sure their church is going to make it over the next month, that they might have to shut down. And yet God has been faithful to us, kept everything going, gave us a great outreach of 2020. Now, let's go see what 2021's got to bring. Let's go see what the future is. Let's go see what the real seed is going to start to produce. But let's not get stuck there. Let's also understand that there might be a few little changes here and there that happen just because we're going after a new seed. And then I thought, well, is there anywhere else that this story would happen? And I found it again in Elijah's story, that this wasn't the first time he dealt with this. This wasn't the first time he had to deal with the decision. It's not the first time he had to teach this. See, God, I believe, took him through the process very first time, because after he took him through the process, he had to take some people through the process. Watch this. If you turn to the 2 Kings chapter 2, and we're going to start right at verse 13. Elisha then picked up Elijah's cloak that had fallen from him and went back and stood on the bank of the Jordan. He took the cloak that had fallen from Elijah and struck the water with it. "Where now is the Lord, the God of Elijah?" he asked. When he struck the water, it divided to the right and to the left, and he crossed over. The company of the prophets from Jericho who were watching said, "The spirit of Elijah is resting on Elisha." And they went to meet him and bowed to the ground before him. "Look," they said, "we, your servants, have 50 able men. Let them go and look for your master. Perhaps the Spirit of the Lord has picked him up and set him down on some mountain or in some valley." "No," Elijah replied, "do not send them." But they persisted until he was too embarrassed to refuse. So he said, "Send them." And they sent 50 men who searched for 3 days but did not find him. And when they returned to Elisha, who was staying in Jericho, he said to them, "Didn't I tell you not to go?" Okay, well, let's just hold it right there for a moment. Let's just stop there. Here's Elijah has now went to heaven. Elisha has his cloak and has the authority, the same authority that Elijah had. In some aspects, it says there was a double portion. And so he has now taken on this authoritative authority figure of who he is. And the culture of what's going on, God is planning something new in Elisha. But there's men, 50 of them, who don't want to follow Elisha. A matter of fact, it's funny to see that they're like, "Oh, the power of God is fallen on Elisha, and the power is there, and he's not," and all in the same sense, in the same very sentence, the same very breath, they're saying, "Let us go find Elijah." So yes, Elisha, you're an authority, but I'm going to go find Elijah because I'm not ready to follow Elisha. I'm going to go back, and I want to continue to be under Elijah and his fruitfulness. And Elisha says, "You can't go back. You won't find him." And they're like, "Yes, we're going to go find him." And it becomes so persistent. They talk so much that they want to go back, that he finally gives in and says, "Okay, go look. I'm going to stand here and wait on you. That you're not going to find him." And he goes, they go off. Not one man, not two men, but 50 men from a city of Jericho, a powerful city, and they send him. They go off and they come back, and he's like, "Look, didn't I tell you? You're not going to find him. He's gone. You've been telling me, what are you going to do, Elisha, when Elijah goes to heaven?" They knew this process. They knew this was happening. And yet, they still did not want to go and bear the new seed that God was planting in them. Isn't that remarkable? That the church itself, the people that were supposed to be following, yes, we're all in, but in the back of their mind, they weren't all in. The reality is they just wanted to stay back there. That's where the fruitfulness is. That's where things were happening. That's where everything was going on. We love you. We love you, Elisha. But Elijah, we're going to stay back here. Kind of reminds me of a lot of Christians a lot of times that I know. I can guarantee you, I could name a handful of people that I've known as Christians probably 10, 15, 20 years ago. And I bet I bet I could go back to them, run into them, and say, you haven't changed one bit. You are the same person that you were 15 years ago with the same problems, the same issues, complaining about the very same thing you complained about then, and nothing in your life has changed. Guarantee it. Matter of fact, I bet we all could think of a few people in our own personal lives where we're like, man, that guy never changes. If you only knew that you can't stay there. See, the beauty of it, it's one of our core values. It's one of our 7 fields, what we call the 7 fields you got to die in. It's one of those things that we say you got to grow, that we're a church that believes in growth. Do we want numbers to come into the building? Absolutely. Do we want people to come? Absolutely. But more importantly, we want you to grow. And because when you grow, the church grows. And so you have to look at yourself and say, do I want to grow? Yes, grow. We are happy with wherever you're at right now. This is how it goes. This is how I say it. I say, hey, I'm good with wherever your starting point is. Where I have a problem is you just can't stay there. You got to grow. You got to allow God to work in you. You got to allow God to do some pruning in you. You got to allow God to do some changes in you. You got to look and see that seed and be like, God, I'm all in. And what is it you need me to do? And bear that fruitfulness. And you got to grow. You got to change. And you can't continually go back. And that's what Elisha is saying here. He went through the process on his own, following Elijah. And now he's coming to the work on himself and Elisha, where he's saying, look, I'm in Jericho, and we can't stay here. It's not that you can't stay in the city. We just can't stay here. We have a new fruitfulness under Elisha. And Elisha says, if you see and know and understand the seed that's being planted and being worked because of the culture and the conditions, you're going to see a new fruitfulness in your life. Okay, let's read a little farther because I see I might be losing a few of you, and I'm going to show it to you. And we're going to start in verse 19 of the same chapter. The people of the city said to Elisha, look, our Lord, this town is well situated, as you can see, but the water is bad and the land is unproductive. Bring me a new bowl, he said, and put salt in it. So they brought it to him. Then he went out to the springs and threw the salt into it, saying, this is what the Lord says, I have healed this water. Never again will it cause death or make the land unproductive. And the water has remained pure to this day, according to the word of Elisha had spoken. Now, here's the funny part of the story, is that the people of the city, the people of Jericho say, look, our Lord, this town is well situated. We're well formed. We're established. We're here. We're strong. We're many people. We're all in. And then this key word comes out. And I don't know if I've ever said it with the church here before, but this key word, but, comes into the mix. They're sitting here telling how well established and how well everything is going and who they are. And then they say, but, which really means that anything you say before that means nothing at all. The real issue is right here. But the water is bad and the land is unproductive. Okay, the water is bad and unproductive under Elijah as well. Let's not forget that. This isn't something that just happened under Elisha's watch. The water was unproductive and bad under Elijah. But God says, look, got a new seed, got something new. See, unproductive you are right here. You're established, but you're unproductive. And here it is, a new seed coming from Elisha that goes to the water with not an old bowl, not a used bowl, but with a new bowl. He says, bring me a new bowl and put salt into it. And then I'll take it to the water and dump it in the water, and the spring will be good, and you will be productive. A new bowl. See, it kind of just brings me along to say that these guys had no clue that they wanted to follow Elijah because they were complaining. Look how unproductive we are. Look how unlaboring we are, but don't change anything. You know, I mean, that's what we as humans do. Oh, my life really stinks right now, but I ain't going to change anything to make it better, because sometimes we live in pain because it's where we're comfortable and it's the normal for us. Do you get that? Sometimes we are so welcoming to pain because it's the only thing we know. And if you take the pain away, what else do I know? So I'm not going to get rid of the pain because I have this anticipation, like I just don't know what's going to happen. And we get stuck there. I mean, can you think about it like Joseph? What would have happened if Joseph was thrown into the pit, and when the Midianites came to pull him out of the pit, if he just said, no, I'm just going to stay down here in the pit. I don't like it down here in the pit. It's not very comfortable. It's dirty. It's dark. I get rained on. It fills halfway up with water. Maybe I'm eating the worms that come out of the side of the ground and the hole. But I'm not coming out. I'm not going up there. I'm going to stay right here because I'm comfortable. But that's what we do with our lives. We're unwilling to let go of the pain. We're unwilling to let go of the hurts and the angers and whatever's going on in our life because it's a normal for us. And we hold on to normal. You know why we hold on to normal? This is why we hold on to normal, because we know what to expect with normal. See, when God says, I have a new seed that I want to plant in you, there's a new seed I want to mature in you, there's a new seed I want to grow in you, there's something new I want you to do in your life. It's this fear of the unknown that holds us, because we don't know what that seed is going to produce. We've never worked on that seed, done anything with that seed, and we don't know what it's going to produce. We know what the pain produces, and we can get ourselves ready for that. But we don't know what the new seed produces, and because we don't know what the new seed produces, we hold back from going to the new seed because this is comfortable for us. And God says, man, if there's anything I know more about God, God says, let me tell you something. I'm always looking to stretch you outside of your comfort zone. Always. So don't sit there too long, because just as soon as you get comfortable, God's ready to make you uncomfortable again, because when you're uncomfortable is when you go back and rely on Him, because you don't know what to do and you have no control. And that's exactly where He wants you. And that's what's going on right here. That's what's going on right here. They're trying to figure out how to stay back in the comfortable moments, and yet they don't want to go see what the new seed under Elisha is all about. New salt. See, this thing, salt, brings a lot to the table. And the thing that it brings to the table, it really does two things. And we have to choose and decide which one of those two things we're willing or wanting to do in our lives. We need to decide one of these two things is going to be for our church. The first thing that salt does is it preserves what it's put on. So it preserves. You know, you can preserve something if you've never done it. You can it. It's a lot of salt, and you put it up on the shelf for future, and you just preserve it. Or it adds flavor. Have you ever eaten food and you're like, oh yeah, that could use a little salt and pepper on that thing. You know, it's a little bland. Matter of fact, just this weekend, we went out for breakfast, Wendy and I did, and we ate, and the hash browns were like really just bland. And Wendy was like, what does it need? I'm like, it needs some salt. It needs something on it. It needs some flavor to bring something to the mix. And I'm like, salt and pepper, they got to do something. Everything else was good except those potatoes. So whoever was cooking the potatoes, they need to know how to put salt on it, because it's just no flavor. And see, we as a church can preserve ourselves, shrink in on ourselves, put ourselves up onto the shelf and preserve ourselves, keep us just there. Or we can say, let's look at it differently and be the salt of the world, but in a sense that we add flavor. Something that draws people. something that loves people, something that cares for people. You see the difference? We can preserve ourselves and say, we're going to do nothing more than be in our four walls ever. And we're just going to hold on to the money we have, and we're going to hold on to the bank accounts, and we're not going to do anything in the community because this is our preservation. Or we can say, let's go be the salt. Let God use the salt to start drawing people to the church. Let's start being creative and outside the box. Let's start making little tweaks and changes to follow this new seed that God is planting inside of us. We saw it happen in December. I think God just gave us this little glimpse in December with this Christmas Engage Our City campaign on what he can do with just what we would call our few $1,000s, but just the 5 loaves and the 5 fishes, what he can do. So he gives us this little glimpse of what he is about to birth, about what he is about ready to grow and do. And now we just can't preserve it. We've got to continue it. We've got to do something with it. And this is why I came up with this little plan for this year. It's kind of my layout, and you're going to hear a lot about it over the entire year, but more specifically about it over these next several months. And I'm calling it Team 365. Now, I know that you're thinking, okay, Team 365, great, whatever. It's just another flashy name. It means nothing. No, I'm going to plaster 365 all over the building. And this is why. See, I want you to listen to it. It's 365 days. Let me just move past this for a second. 365 days, 365 new opportunities to love our community. Every day is new. Every day is fresh. Every day is another guarantee. Every day is something God can do better, something we can perform, somewhere we can go. 365, 365. And what I'm asking the church to do is this: be a part of Team 365. I'm actually making t-shirts that say Team 365 because I'm going to wear them. It's like my serving shirt around here. Why? Because this is why. 3 stands for this. I need you to connect with 3 people this year. 3 non-Christian people this year. Doesn't seem like hard to do because we could walk out our doors and find a non-Christian person relatively fast, relatively quick. You could, I don't know, maybe walk to your neighbors, the neighbors that open the garage door and drive in the garage door and shut the garage door and never come out their doors. Or if that's you, we do it. Connect with 3 people. Walk with them. Find something new about their life. Journey with them. Go with them. See what's going on. Help them. I don't know. Find 3 people to connect with throughout the year. 6. I almost forgot my own self. 6. Invite 6 people to church. However that looks. Okay? Connect with 3. Invite 6. Statistics show that people don't come to church just because they're never invited. Because we always feel like somebody else is going to invite them. Or, oh no, they'll never want to go. They'll never want to do it. They'll never want to be there. They'll never want to be a part of it. So it's not real hard to just look at somebody and say, hey, you ought to come to church with us. Oh, you don't want to come to church? You feel a little uncomfortable? Hey, check it out online because you can go right to Facebook Live or YouTube Live. If you're a little uncomfortable coming in, no big deal. Just watch it online. Just start to connect with us. Start to be a part of us. If you've got any questions, hey, just let me know. I'd love to walk you through a few things in life. Invite 6 people. Doesn't mean all 6 are going to show up. 1 of those 6 might show up. 0 of those 6 might show up. 6 of those 6 might show up. You don't know, but it's something that we're called to do. So 3 times connect with somebody. 6 invites. And 5, get involved. Get involved. Is it not time to just stop sitting in our chairs and time to get involved? Get involved 5 different ways this year, 5 different times. And I know that you might be thinking, okay, that's a lot, Rodney. That's like once every other month that I got to get involved and go do something. Look, when I say get involved, let me put some clarity to this. The clarity is this: 5, get involved. If you're connecting with somebody, hey, that's get involved once. If you're inviting somebody, that's get involved twice. If for the first time in your life, or maybe a reconnection, you're like, you know what, I'm gonna start tithing to the church, and I'm gonna invest in my future with God and my spirituality, my walk, and my finances. That would be 3 times. Do you see how fast 5 really happens? Like, it's quick. It's not difficult. It's not hard. But be a part of the team. God says, I'm looking for a team. I'm looking for some disciples. I'm looking for people who are going to follow me, who are going to be all in, who are going to burn the plows, boil the oxen, feed it off. I want to know who's going to burn the ships and not go back to the ship, to go back to the way it is, because we're moving forward. And if we just start doing some simple things in our community, in our way that we do, then God will start maturing and growing the seed and plugging more things in, and more and more and more. He's telling us these things. He's showing us this thing. And I'm telling you, Team 365, it's just a simple terminology to just remind us that 365, every day is a new opportunity and a new day for us to love our community and to be a part of this place. You know, last year was a weird year. 16 weeks we were closed down. 16 weeks we never stepped foot in this building over the entire year. And yet, when we all got behind something on a Engage Our City at Christmas time, look what God did. Can you imagine if we had 52 weeks of that, of us all being into our community, what it would be like? I mean, I've got a huge whiteboard in that room over there, and I've started writing goals on that thing because I'm a goal-driven. For me, I got to see the goal. And for me, it's like, isn't it time that our Easter services is lower than our normal services? Isn't it time for God to fill the place at Easter time? Aren't you tired of our Christmas Eve services? I love our Christmas Eve services, but aren't you ready and excited to see that how God is starting to move and what he's starting to do, that he could fill this place on Christmas Eve? Bar snow and heavy fog, you know? I get that. But aren't you ready for that? God just, he has the ability just to do it, and that's it. But it doesn't take us through a process. We have to learn. We have to be stretched. And God says, if you do your part of Team 365, I can do my part and draw people and soften their hearts. I can work on them. They'll start to connect with you and believe in you, and they'll start to believe in me. They'll see that you care and they love them, and they'll start to come. And then when they start to come, then you start to go out into community even more. And you start to get plugged in more, and you start to grow and grow and grow. And God's doing all these things, but he's just asking for you to look at the new seed. Just look at the new seed. Look back in your life and say, what is it that's been tugging at me for so long, and I've just ignored it because I didn't think it was something that I should do? And God says, I planted the seed there. What is it you want? What is it you want to do with your life and in your life to be a part of who he is? What will be your legacy? That's what it's all about. That's what this year is all about. Let's just bow our heads as we close. This year is going to bring a lot of different stuff to the table. And we're going all in. I don't know about you or where you are personally, but I want to see what God can do if I'm all in. I want to see what he can do in my life. I want to see what he can do in my family. I want to see what he can do on my job. I want to see what my God can do here with the church when I burn the plows and boil the oxen and be all in with him. And where's your part? Where's your role? What are you called to do? Jesus, I just pray today in this room and across the internet, Lord, that homes and people are being touched. That they are starting this new year, this new time, this new process with fresh eyes. It's always great at the beginning of the year and how we see things. You know, we always plan our diets and plan to go through them, but by week 2, we give up. This is a process. I'm saying let's not give up on God. Like we see the seed. Don't be the 50 men that said, I see the seed, but I'm still going to go back. Be the ones that say, God, we're all in with this place. We're all in with you. We are connected. We're a team. And God, whatever you've called us to do, whatever happens in this place, whatever changes goes on, whatever little tweaks and little things that go amongst, it's not about all those tweaks and those challenges. It's just us preparing the way for where God's taking us. But man, God, fill this place. God, reach deep down into each and every one of our souls. Grab a hold of those seeds that you were planted there so many years ago. And God, start to grow those seeds. God, give me 3 people in my life that are around me that I could just connect with, that I could just touch and talk to. Doesn't have to be this in-depth thing, but just to show them that I care. Lord, show me the 6 people in my life and around me that I should invite to church. Lord, give me 5 ways to get involved this year, 5 different ways to get involved this year. 5 things I can do to support the vision and the goal that you have for me. Show me what that is. Start to draw those things out in me, Lord. Because, Lord, I want to be a person who is compassionate. I want to be a person that says, I'm all in, not just for 2 weeks, but 365, I'm all in. There's not a day that doesn't come by that I say there's not a new opportunity for me to reach and love somebody. There's not a moment in time. Lord, I pray that even the mistakes that we make, Lord, you can use. If we do something wrong, hey, God, you can use those. I pray that over the church. I pray that over our community. I pray that over Wayne County, Lord. That we're going to be a church that, yes, is the light and the salt. Not the salt that preserves, but the salt that adds flavor. The salt and the seasoning that is just perfect, that people can't wait to get a bite of something, to know who you are. Begin to do that. Begin to work in us. And if that's you and you're online or you're here at the sanctuary, the church, and you're like, I'm all in with God this year. I know it's not going to be easy. I know it's going to be difficult. I know it's going to be a journey. Nothing with God is invest today and reap tomorrow. It's a long game run. It's eternity. It's your life. It's your soul. What he promises you. If that's you, then just say this simple prayer. God, I'm all in. I want to be an Elisha who burned the ox, or boiled the oxen, burnt the plows. I want to be an Elisha that takes this journey with Elijah and assists him and grows in stature, Lord, that I don't want to stay right where I'm at today. but I want to grow in you. And I'm willing to allow that seed to grow, to fester inside of me, to be a new thing. Something new. In Jesus' name, amen. Look, guys, I hope and I pray, my prayer for this year is this 365, Team 365. That's where I believe God has taken us this year, to get us all on the same platform, the same thing, same playing field. Just imagine what we could be doing January of 2022 when we look back 52 weeks, if we all can be in. The growth, the spiritual growth, whatever it is. We could be here next year, 1 year from now, and be like, man, what an amazing year that was. We thought 2020 was great. 2020 was even better than that 2020. And man, then you're really all in. We're like, man, let's go for 2022 and let's go. Let's look at our life. Let's look at the positive. Let's smile together, laugh together, be a part of each other. Reach out to those around us, near us, your sphere of influence. Man, be a light into the dark world. That's right where we're at. It's what he's called us to do. Love our community 365 times, 365 days, all the way through the year. Don't forget that February 4th is our annual membership meeting, and those things that I announced before, just kind of consider where you're at with the Worcester Foursquare Church. We'd love to have everybody sign and join and be a part of it, and revamp and really go after what God has for each and every one of us this year. We will see you guys next week at 10 o'clock right here in the main campus of Worcester or on Facebook. We love you guys. Hit us up in the comments. Let us know right where you're at and right where you're from. Make those guys in the sound booth actually have to work a little bit instead of just sitting back there going. Thanks, guys, and we'll see you all next week.